everybody, and welcome to the brain surgery panel. I mean, the comedy panel, sorry. Joining us today are Michael, Deborah, Megan, and Rodney, who will be talking to us about writing humor. And I'm Zoe, the moderator for this discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to remind our viewers that if you'd like a chance to win a prize pack of Wattpad coins, good for unlocking paid stories, write the phrase, "We thrive together," into the chat. Now, let's get started. Our panelists here are writing in all different styles and genres, but their stories all tend to be funny. Why do they write comedy? Let's find out from Michael first.
Sure. Hey, everybody. So I think the reason why I write comedy, like first and foremost, is I really just like to make people laugh. And obviously that's an important part of writing humor and comedy. But the main reason why I think I write comedy is I really like to use it to sort of tackle difficult subjects that are maybe a little bit uncomfortable. And I find that if you're doing it with humor, you tend to sort of like disarm people, make them a little bit more open to new ideas, new points of view. And I think it's just a really great way into a serious topic.
Nice. Deb, what do you think? Why do you write comedy?
Well, for similar reasons, it is a way of taking on a challenging topic and making it into something that people will actually still love to read, because everything I write tends to have some type of a thematic core that is something that's important to me that I want to say, something about the environment or inclusion or feminism or celebrity culture. But if I was going to address those issues without the humor, I think it could end up being a bit soapboxy. So instead, I get to bring readers on a fun ride with me and still get my ideas out into the world. And the other thing is I have had a lot of pain in my life. And so for me, it's either laughing or crying, and I prefer to laugh.
Yes, so do we all. Megan, what are your thoughts about writing comedy?
For me, writing comedy, I find it to be a challenge for sure. Trying to put together a story that readers are not only entertained by, but that making someone laugh is even in just like in conversation, when you make someone laugh, it's the best feeling. So I find it really challenging to try and do the same thing on the page when they're not in front of you, and you're trying to create something that they can enjoy on their own away from you, and you hope that you're pulling it off by making them laugh. And so yeah, I think the challenge of it is the main draw for me.
Nice. How about Rodney? Why do you enjoy writing comedy?
I think I just like to cuss. When I'm writing my comedy, I tend to use a heck of a lot more cuss words. Most of my comedy is written in a conversational tone, and kind of it's first person point of view. So in my first person point of view in my head, I swear a lot. So that kind of translates, and there have been times where I have written a passage and it's kind of dry and it's not really going anywhere. But as soon as I add that tone on it, that voice more than anything else, it just actually turned into something else. It's not really about adding more swear words. The occasional one does help, but when it just became more conversational, it took on a voice of its own, and that was like just core to the message that I was sending across. And the message really is not to take things so seriously, see things from a different perspective. And if you're trying to teach someone a lesson, they're not going to listen to you if you are preaching at them and shoving it in your face. If you can use comedy and just layer things so that they're lulled into a conversation and they can laugh with you, they can get comfortable with you, then by the time they finish reading the chapter, they've actually learned a lesson on in some cases how to do a street fight without getting murdered, which involves running away.
Nice. That makes sense. So comedy is all about making readers laugh, but there are a lot of ways to do that. So what types of humors do you guys use in your stories? Let's go with Megan.
Well, so Zombie Shark Highway, which is my main book on Wattpad, is a horror comedy, is sort of what I call it. But I would say it's a parody, and yeah, I just like I sort of took I loved all those like Sharknado movies and things like that, and I wanted to see if you could take that and put it on a page and see if it can translate as well, and sort of it's all kind of one big wink at the audience, and but the characters are taking it very seriously. So there's not it's I don't write sort of like joke and joke and joke, ha ha ha. It's the characters are really buying into the whole thing, and the audience is supposed to be like, nah, you guys are silly.
Nice. And how about Deb? What types of humor do you like using in your stories?
Well, I use a lot of different types of humor. One thing that I really experimented with a lot in Prince Charming Must Die is breaking the fourth wall. I don't know why I love it so much, but it cracks me up. And I think it's something that works really well on Wattpad, because since you're interacting with your readers and your audience, this is a way that you can actually bring them in on the joke. And I think people love that. I think they love when they feel part of it and when they're on the inside. There's nothing worse than being on the outside of a joke, but when you're on the inside, it's really fun. And then I toss in a little bit of anachronistic humor, some puns, irony, and pretty much then we have a Brittany Charmantine book with all of that.
All of that. How about Rodney? So we know you like cussing. What types of humor do you like to use in your stories in addition to cussing?
Well, it's mostly character driven. Just like Megan, we can have a completely serious situation. Because if you took away all of the humorous the telling of the prose in my book, I should probably start that again. I'm not going to start that again. Okay, if you took away all of the jokes, and there aren't really jokes because we don't tell jokes, from my chapters, you actually find that the entire story is not that funny. It is actually more of an action movie. But then when you take the characters and you put them in there, the characters take on a life of their own, and they really move, they interact with the whole environment and how they react, and just interact with each other. That really changes everything. It makes it funny, and it's hard to explain sometimes. But I've had times where I've had to say, take a synopsis of what's happening in my chapter, and I look at it and I go like, what did I just write? But then I read it over, and I find myself laughing at my own stuff, which is usually a good sign. So obviously something is working right. But if I can point it down to anything, it's the characters.
Character dynamic, yes, very important. How about Michael? What types of humor do you like using in your stories?
So I mostly write satire, and that's probably what I'm like best known for on Wattpad. So Peter's Little Peter is the satire, and I'm really sort of satirizing generally like a high school experience, but in more particular, I'm satirizing a very toxically masculine environment. And so, like, similar to kind of what Rodney was saying, like if you sort of took out all the humor, you'd probably be left with like a really sad story that was like earnest at times and then sad at other times, right? But putting that humor in it, making it satire, it actually kind of allows us to laugh at it and maybe see this environment in a new way. And that tends to be how I think about it. So predominantly satire, but then I will also do parody from time to time. And that's kind of a close cousin to satire, except that instead of lampooning, a specific kind of like theme or topic, you're actually kind of making fun of a particular piece of media. So like I'm also known for doing like Prometheus Framed, which is just a sort of like a parody of the Prometheus story and Hamburger Hamlet, which is just a kind of loose, very loose parody of Hamlet.
All right. So next up, we have, so we find a lot of funny stories on Wattpad, but sometimes it just feels like random humor. How do you make sure that you're writing something funny? Because we don't want to just be a list of jokes. Deb, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think we've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but good comedy comes from character. So the character that you're writing could be funny, but the character himself or herself or their self doesn't know they're being funny. And so you're not playing it for laughs. The character is inside the moment, and whatever is happening around them is what makes it funny. The other thing is, I think that comedy allows the reader to laugh at foibles that this character is encountering in his life. And by allowing us to laugh at that we, the reader, experience a moment of transcendence over our own foibles. So, yeah, comedy celebrates human folly.
I think to go with that point, it's an experience. You can't write good comedy. It's not just about writing. It's not writing jokes. It's about taking a life experience and putting it through a different lens. So you'll find that a lot of people who haven't suffered any adversity, they have a different view of jokes. They have a different view of what's funny. For instance, I can't stand cringe humor where someone else is suffering, because if you're laughing at some person's discomfort, and that kind of really it just irritates the heck out of me whenever I see it coming. I literally cringe, but I have to stop watching. So what I try to do is not do anything cringy, but actually do something that's actually funny. Don't poke fun at somebody. Don't punch down, but instead try to find a situation that is. I can't think of the best way to end this, but it's supposed to be enlightening, but that's not the right word. Come on, help me here, Debbie.
It's like a situation comedy. You put the characters into a crucible, and you see what they have to do to get out of it. So you're empowering the characters rather than beating them down. The characters are taking action, and we're laughing because we know we would be doing the exact same thing, or oh my God, that's such a wacky way of doing it. But we're not laughing at the character, his or herself. I'm sorry, I have such trouble with pronouns lately.
And the thing about that is also that people in that who can laugh at that, they've been in those situations and they can see the humor in it. But and that's because they've actually gone through that adversity. So if you have someone, if you are a writer and you are very rich and you have never suffered anything, no one's ever told you no, then your sense of humor is going to be vastly different. This is actually a case when we were trying to do a trailer for my book, not How Not to Vampire, for So I Might Be a Vampire, way back. We had cast this Latino actor that I know, brilliant actor. He's great. He's just a gorgeous guy, absolutely fits in everything, can do stunts, but he was a big damn hero, and he was completely wrong for the role. As soon as we saw him on camera, it's like, wait a minute, that's not Bob. And I was talking to him about some of the situations, and he was a very lucky guy. And he never wanted for anything. So he couldn't actually make the emotional connection about being a loser.
Right.
Okay, I'm done.
So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. What would you add?
Oh, sorry, your mic was off.
My mic is off?
No, it was off. It's back on now.
Michael, would you like to chime in on how you ensure your writing is actually funny?
Sure. Well, if it's actually funny, that's kind of a different thing. I think just making sure that it's not random that's a little bit of a challenge. But for me, I tend to really think a lot about theme, right? Because I actually do write a lot of jokes and write a lot of bits, and a lot of them get cut. And the reason why they get cut, the vast majority of them, they're either going to get cut because they're not funny, which happens, but they also get cut, and they mostly get cut because they're just not on theme, right? It's kind of like jumping into an internet forum and being off topic. But your theme is really kind of like that's the message of your story. That's really what your story is about. And so if your humor is aligned with that theme, if it's on point with that theme, if it's advancing that theme, it's saying something about that theme, the chances are it's probably pretty good, right? Like it might need some fine tuning. You can always make it better, but you're like directionally you're hitting the right way, and that tends to be how I think of it. And then the other thing that I kind of think of too, and something that Rodney had kind of said, was like not punching down, because there's a lot of directions you can kind of punch down, and when you do that, you can also get kind of very random and sort of head in a lot of different ways. But if you're punching up, it generally means that like you've identified like a big thing that you really want to address, and that's your theme, right? But that's just another way of thinking about the same thing, right? So punch up or think about theme, or however you want to like conceptualize it for yourself. But that's generally how I try to think about like what jokes do make it in and what jokes end up kind of just in the trash bin.
So we know that punching down is like making fun of people who are just down and out, but what would be an example of punching up, Michael? Just to elaborate a little bit real quick.
So a good example about that is like, for example, right? Like, so Peter's Little Peter, the book that I'm kind of best known for on Wattpad, the thing that I'm punching up against is toxic masculinity. And I'm not punching up at a particular person or not a particular guy or anything like that. It's actually just kind of a cultural thing, right? And so you're actually aiming at something that's far bigger than your character. It's actually bigger than all of your characters, right? And so that's a very big target, and it's a powerful target, right? It actually has, and that's key, it has more power than the characters in your story, right? Or than your hero, your main character. And so when you're making fun of that, it's a joke that I think everybody can kind of get in on, even people who I think might actually exhibit that culture more than others can actually participate in that humor, because it's not really about them, right? It's actually about a thing that's larger than them. And that's what I mean by punching up.
Great. Thank you for that, Michael. And how about Megan? How do you ensure that your writing remains funny?
Well, I guess you never know if you're succeeding or not. So you kind of just hope. I think also a lot of it, like, humor is so subjective, and also the different stories that the way humor can manifest in a story, there's just so many different ways that I think you have to, there's a lot of it is having to trust your gut and your own sense of humor, because my sense of humor might be different from your sense of humor, and like maybe we both hate each other's stories, but there's also going to be people out there who share your sense of humor and who sort of get the joke that you're going for. So I think for writing comedy, you kind of have to go with your gut and trial and error, and sometimes the joke's not going to land, and that's when you got to kind of decide if it's for you, and if it is, then dust yourself off and go at it again.
That's right. So there's so many ways to go about it. What advice can you share for some writers who are new to writing comedy? Rodney, let's start with you.
Advice for writing comedy?
Yeah, for people who are just starting out.
Well, first, try to find your voice, because the voice is the most important thing with comedy. If you don't have a very strong voice, you have to build it. You have to be able to listen to conversations and just pick up how people talk, because how people talk, the pattern, the rhythm, the cadence, how everything is laid out, that determines how people listen, and also it's how people read. Because you can write a pitter patter into your speech, or just into your prose, and that determines exactly how funny it's going to be. Doing dry purple prose or anything that is too poetic is not going to work unless you are really, really damn good. So first of all, know yourself and just go and try to find that voice. One of the things that I do to do that, I used to love to do that before COVID, was just go and sit in a coffee shop or in a mall or something with a book or whatever, and not really read, but just listen to people. And you can actually hear all these different conversations. You can hear all the different accents and how people are really relating to each other. They talk differently in those environments than they do with people they're trying to impress or people they know. It's just a different character. So by doing that, you're building a whole list of characters that you can draw on later. But you're really just finding out how people work. If you ever want to know how people work, ask somebody who writes comedy.
Very good. And Deb, what advice do you have for our young writers out there?
Well, to piggyback on what Rodney was saying about voice, when I first decided to write humor, I completely emulated Douglas Adams' voice. I don't know if you guys know Douglas Adams. He wrote Hitchhiker's Guide. He's like a favorite of everyone on the panel. But I completely emulated his voice. And then eventually, of course, it just turned into my own voice. But so by saying that, what I'm saying to you is, if you're a new writer, copy someone. Don't, steal their ideas, but read their work, get to know their voice, write in that voice, and eventually you won't even be able to help it. Your own voice is going to shine through. So another bit of advice is to read a lot of humor. You should read everyone on this panel. You should read all of their books. And then just write, rewrite, rinse, repeat until you
Very good. Nice. Thanks for that, Deb. And let's go with Michael. What advice would you give our young readers? I mean, our writers of comedy.
Yeah, so this is a little bit more like the voice stuff. Totally, that's all really great advice. This is a little bit more technical, and I would say just work your premise like crazy. And your premise is just that 1 or 2 sentence description of your story. So you're going to kind of get like the main character, maybe the sidekick, you're going to get kind of an antagonist and kind of a sense of that world and where you're going to go. But it's not the whole story. It's just a really short little encapsulation of your story. But you really, really want to refine that, because that's where all of your humor is going to come from. It's where it's going to live. And that's going to be kind of like the boundaries of what's going to make sense and be funny in that world. So I would say spend as much time as you can just refining that premise until it's something that works for you, but that also you should be able to identify that's an inherently funny premise, or I can see where I can pull humor out of that premise. So just work your premise like crazy.
Thank you, Michael. And Megan, what advice would you like to give?
I think I really like what Deb was saying, that reading in the genre is so important to helping develop your voice and sort of expose yourself to different ways that people approach humor in books, because there is so many different ways. So it's so important to read as much as you can. And I think, like I was saying before, my main thing is just, don't be afraid. Just go ahead and try. And, a joke may not work, or a premise may not work, and it's not as funny as you thought, but by failing, you'll get to the space where you have success and you start finding your voice in that space.
That's right.
Piggyback on that quickly, you're right. Be prepared to fail a lot. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But just keep on going, because at some point you're going to write something and you are going to start laughing your ass off, and it's going to work, and you're going to give it to someone else and they're going to laugh their ass off, and you're going to know that you actually wrote something funny, and you're going to look at what you did and you're going to build on it, and it's a great feeling.
It really is. All right, so we've got some audience questions coming in. So let's go with whoever wants to answer this one, just dive in. So the question is, how do you put dark humor into your story without accidentally offending someone or making someone uncomfortable?
I'd have to say, don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah,
that is great advice.
It's kind of important, because if you look at it and you are feeling uncomfortable about it, yeah, it's uncomfortable, and whoever's going to read it is going to be uncomfortable. If you have dark humor, get a second voice, and then get a third voice, and then get somebody who completely disagrees with you, so that if they actually say this is funny, then you know that this person isn't just not just letting you go along and disagreeing with you because they're your friend. Get different voices.
That's a great point. Definitely to have other people tell you if you're hitting the mark or not, because it's pretty hard to see all by yourself whether or not it's working out. So definitely.
It's a good reason to have an editor, and a funny editor. Deb is actually my editor, and if I don't get 6 laughs from her in a chapter, I know that I've done it wrong. So I go back and I add more until I get at least. I'm trying to aim for 10 LOLs every chapter.
You always get it.
Eventually.
All right, let's do one. Sorry, let's do one more question. What comedy stories or comedians have been a big influence on you and your writing? Anybody?
Well, I'll start. I already mentioned Douglas Adams, but my favorite book is written by an author named Christopher Moore, and it's called according to Biff, Christ's Childhood Pal. And if you haven't read it, you should read it, because it's hilarious and also well researched and just brilliant on every level.
Terry Pratchett. Read anything by Terry Pratchett, especially the Discworld series. You can disregard like the first 5 books of the series, and because it gets funny, really, really funny after like book 5. But he's got such a good blend of satire and humor, and just really good storytelling that is something that we should really all emulate. So Terry Pratchett, British and brilliant.
All right. Okay, I think we have time for another question. How do we know when it's appropriate moment for comedy, or if the comedy would break the tension? Like when might a joke ruin a moment?
You're going to have to figure that out trial and error. I mean, we just kind of like stepped on each other right now. Like timing's kind of everything, and it's hard over Zoom. But yeah, like sometimes you want to do it, but I think just honestly, you have to be deliberate about it, make a choice, live with it, see how it goes. If it doesn't work, rewrite it. But yeah, make a choice to inject humor at a certain moment.
Yeah, and sometimes the bad humor or uncomfortable humor, it can be a character or plot defining moment, and it changes the dynamic of.
Rodney, let Megan speak too.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Sorry.
It's okay. I was just gonna say that I think reading in a lot of books in the humor space helps give you a real sense of the sort of like ebb and flow of a story and the tension, and once you start to get a sense of like rising tension, you start to see the moments where a good break would really like help the moment, and where it would totally derail a scene. And so I think, yeah, if you're unsure, then just keep reading, and you'll start to get a sense of rhythms in a scene.
Perfect. Reading gives you so much information. Well, that's all the time we've got for our panel, right? For the comedy panel. The next one up is To Be Serialized, which is all about tips and tricks on how to write serials that work and how to keep your readers hooked. So stay tuned for that panel next. Thank you for visiting, everybody. And thank you for all the panelists giving great answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
What is WritersConnX?
It's a community of writers helping other writers.
Most of us are Wattpad stars.
And that's the connecting thread.
Thanks for sponsoring us, Wattpad.
But we are writers first. It's what we do.
We write every single day.
Well, some of us do.
So we've decided to hold our own author convention.
We have panels organized by writers with topics we want to talk about.
Genre panels like romance, new adult, and vampires.
Industry panels like serial fiction, the craft of writing,
How to get an agent and keep one.
And we have author meet and greet sessions all online.
We don't just talk about it, we live it.
We're not a panel of experts selling books about how to do things.
We're writers, just like you, and we have experiences to share.
So connect with us. Maybe you learn a thing or two.
We write together, we thrive together.
WritersConnX, November 5th through 6th.